Okay, so, wow. 2 major air disasters in just a few days.
Yeah.
The mid-air collision in D.C. and now this Medevac jet crash here in Philly.
Right.
It's definitely got everyone on edge. Today, we're taking a deep dive into what happened with this Learjet crash, pulling insights from eyewitness accounts, air traffic control recordings, and early investigative reports.
Yeah, it's a complex situation.
For sure.
And it's important to approach it with a balance of sensitivity and analytical rigor. We'll need to look at not just what happened,
right,
but also why it happened and what it means for aviation safety going forward.
Right, because we're not just dealing with a tragic loss of life here.
Yeah.
We're also dealing with the potential erosion of public trust in medical aviation.
Absolutely.
Especially when you consider the plane went down in a residential area near the Roosevelt Mall.
Yeah.
Imagine the fear that must have gripped that neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The impact on the community is significant.
Yeah.
And while the initial reports suggest at least 7 fatalities,
wow,
including the crew passengers and tragically a driver on the ground.
Oh, gosh.
The debris field is extensive.
Yeah.
It's going to be a painstaking process to piece together exactly what happened.
It makes you wonder what the search teams are finding as they go house to house sifting through the wreckage.
It's a grim task, but a necessary one.
Yeah.
Every piece of debris, every fragment of information could be a clue to understanding how this unfolded.
Right.
And this wasn't just any flight.
No.
This was a medical transport carrying a young patient and her mother back home to Tijuana, Mexico.
Oh, wow.
After receiving treatment at Shriners Children's Hospital.
So they were already dealing with a medical crisis, and then this happens on their way home.
Yeah.
It adds another layer of tragedy to an already heartbreaking situation, especially considering they had just completed the child's treatment and were on their way to Missouri before heading back to Mexico.
That detail really emphasizes the human cost of this accident.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the technical aspects of a plane crash. But ultimately, it's about the people whose lives are forever changed by these events.
Absolutely. And what makes this crash even more puzzling is that it happened just 30 seconds after takeoff.
Wow.
That's barely any time at all.
Right.
Were there any warning signs, anything that could have indicated something was wrong?
That's what investigators are trying to determine.
Okay.
What's interesting is that while the pilot didn't report any problems directly, the air traffic control recordings indicate that controllers detected an issue minutes before the crash.
What kind of issue are we talking about? What were they saying?
Well, there's audio of them trying to reach the aircraft.
Okay.
Asking if they were still on frequency. There's a definite sense of urgency in their voices, which suggests they were picking up on something unusual.
It's like listening to a mystery unfold in real time. You know something bad is about to happen.
Right.
But you're not sure exactly what or why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that makes those recordings all the more chilling.
Yeah.
They offer a glimpse into the final moments of the flight.
Right.
And the growing concern in the tower.
I can't even imagine what it must have been like for the people on the ground who witnessed this.
Oh, gosh.
I read about Michael Hitchner, who saw the crash from his parked car and rushed to help.
Right.
His account is absolutely harrowing.
His testimony is incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
He describes hearing the parents' desperate cries for help.
Oh, gosh.
And the chaotic scene as he tried to assist the injured.
Yeah.
The fact that he was able to provide aid amid such devastation speaks to his courage.
It's hard to wrap your head around that level of trauma.
I know.
To see a plane go down like that, to hear those cries for help.
It's awful.
It's something that will stay with him forever.
No doubt. And his account, along with the air traffic control recordings, will be crucial pieces of the puzzle for investigators as they try to reconstruct the events leading up to the crash.
Speaking of which, I can't help but think about Jet Rescue Air Ambulance's website, where they proudly proclaim their impeccable safety record just days before this crash.
Oh, wow.
They even featured this very plane in a promotional video.
That detail adds a layer of irony to this tragedy, wouldn't you say?
It definitely does. It makes you question the efficacy of self-reported safety data.
Yeah.
If a company with a supposedly impeccable record can experience such a catastrophic event,
right,
what does that say about the broader industry?
Right.
Do we need more robust, independent oversight?
Those are excellent questions.
Yeah.
And they point towards a larger conversation about how we assess and ensure safety in medical aviation.
Absolutely. We need to dive deeper into that.
Yeah.
But first, I think it's important to acknowledge that this 30-second time frame is incredibly significant.
You're right. 20 seconds is barely enough time to react to a sudden malfunction, let alone avert a disaster.
So we're not just talking about a pilot error here.
Yeah.
We're potentially looking at a catastrophic mechanical failure that occurred almost immediately after takeoff.
Yeah.
What kind of failure could have such immediate and devastating consequences?
That's the question investigators will be focusing on.
Right.
We'll need to examine the wreckage, analyze the flight data recorder, and piece together every detail to understand what went wrong and why it happened so quickly.
This is where the real deep dive begins, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And as we delve into the complexities of this crash, it's crucial to remember the human stories at its heart. We're talking about lives lost, families shattered, and a community grappling with the aftermath of this tragedy.
You're right. It's easy to get lost in the technical details, but we must never lose sight of the human cost.
Exactly.
These aren't just statistics. They're people with hopes and dreams, and their loss deserves to be acknowledged and remembered.
Absolutely.
It's hard to grasp the magnitude of their loss, especially considering the circumstances surrounding this flight. A medical transport meant to bring hope and healing, ending in such a devastating way. It's a cool irony that adds another layer of complexity to this already tragic situation.
What's fascinating here is how this crash raises questions about the inherent risks involved in medical aviation.
Yeah.
It's a specialized field with its own set of challenges and complexities, often operating under tighter time constraints and in less than ideal conditions.
You're right, and that makes the need for robust safety protocols and stringent oversight even more critical.
Absolutely.
We can't afford to compromise on safety, especially when lives are at stake.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this crash highlights the need for a broader conversation about accountability and transparency within the medical aviation industry. Are self-reported safety records enough?
Yeah, are they?
Do we need more independent audits and stricter regulations? These are questions that demand serious consideration.
I agree. It's not just about assigning blame. It's about identifying systemic vulnerabilities and implementing measures to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future.
Precisely. And that involves examining every aspect of the operation. From pilot training and aircraft maintenance to air traffic control procedures and emergency response protocols. We need a multi-layered approach to ensure safety at every level.
It sounds like a daunting task, but it's one we can't afford to ignore.
We can't.
And while investigations are underway, it's crucial to consider the immediate impact on Jet Rescue Air Ambulance. Their reputation has taken a significant hit. And they're likely facing serious legal and financial consequences.
Undoubtedly, their impeccable safety record now rings hollow. And they'll be under intense scrutiny from regulators, the public, and of course, the families of the victims.
Of course.
This incident could potentially have far-reaching implications for their operations and the medical aviation industry as a whole.
It's a stark reminder that safety should never be taken for granted, and that even a single incident can have a ripple effect throughout an entire industry.
What's also interesting is how this crash underscores the importance of eyewitness accounts in these investigations. Michael Hitchner's testimony provides valuable context and humanizes the tragedy in a way that data alone cannot.
His description of the scene, the parents' cries for help, the scattered medical supplies.
It's awful.
It paints a vivid picture of the chaos and desperation in those moments.
It's a powerful reminder that behind every statistic, behind every investigation report, there are real people whose lives are forever changed by these events.
It's a sobering thought. And it leads me back to the air traffic control recordings. What can we learn from those conversations between the tower and the doomed aircraft?
Those recordings offer a unique window into the final minutes of the flight. Allowing us to analyze the communication patterns, the tone of voice, any potential signs of distress that might offer clues about what contributed to the crash.
It's like piecing together a puzzle, but with incredibly high stakes.
It is.
And it must be agonizing for the families to hear those recordings, knowing they capture the last moments of their loved ones' lives.
It's a delicate balance between pursuing the truth and respecting the sensitivity surrounding these investigations.
Right.
We need to learn from these tragedies without causing further pain to those already grieving.
It's a difficult but necessary task. And as we delve deeper into these recordings, it's crucial to consider the broader context of aviation safety.
Okay.
Are there systemic issues that need to be addressed?
Yeah.
Are there improvements we can make to prevent similar communication breakdowns in the future?
Those are excellent questions.
I hope so.
And they highlight the importance of continuous improvement in aviation safety.
Yeah.
We can't become complacent.
Right.
We need to constantly evaluate procedures, invest in new technologies, and foster a culture of safety at every level.
It's about learning from past mistakes, pushing for innovation, and ensuring that air travel remains as safe as possible for everyone.
Precisely. And it's not just the responsibility of aviation authorities and industry professionals.
Right.
We as passengers and informed citizens also have a role to play.
You're right. We can demand transparency, support safety initiatives, and hold those in power accountable for upholding the highest safety standards.
It's a collective effort.
Yeah, it is.
And by working together, we can honor the memory of those lost in these tragedies by creating a safer and more resilient aviation industry for the future.
This crash has sparked a lot of questions, many of which remain unanswered.
They do.
But as we continue to learn more about what happened, it's important to consider what stands out to you most about this particular incident.
Okay.
Is there a detail or an aspect that you find particularly compelling or thought-provoking?
For me, it's the chilling realization that even with all our advancements in technology and safety protocols, we can't completely eliminate risk. Accidents can still happen, and the consequences can be devastating.
For sure.
It's a humbling reminder of the inherent uncertainties in life and the need for constant vigilance.
It's also a reminder of our interconnectedness, how a single event can have a ripple effect across communities and industries.
Absolutely.
This crash will have lasting consequences.
Yes, it will.
Not just for the families directly affected, but for the medical aviation industry and the public's perception of air travel as a whole.
Absolutely. And while we can't predict the future, we can learn from the past and strive to mitigate risks to the best of our ability.
Right.
This crash is a call to action.
Yeah.
A reminder that safety is an ongoing process and that we must never stop pushing for improvements and demanding accountability.
We've covered a lot of ground here dissecting the details of this crash.
We have.
The potential causes, the human impact, and the ongoing investigation. But as we move towards the end of our deep dive, there's one lingering question I can't shake.
And what's that?
We've talked about systemic changes, technological advancements.
Right.
But what about the human element?
Okay.
What can individual passengers like you listening right now do to contribute to a safer flying experience?
Right.
It might seem like a small thing, but I think it's worth discussing.
That's a great point. Often safety discussions focus on the big picture, the regulations and technology.
Right.
But passenger awareness and action can make a real difference.
Okay, so what can we as passengers actually do? Besides the obvious things like paying attention to safety briefings, I mean.
Well, for starters, be informed.
Okay.
Research the airlines you fly, their safety records, and their commitment to new safety technology.
Okay.
You have the power to choose airlines that prioritize safety.
That's interesting. So we can vote with our wallets in a way.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to speak up.
Okay.
If you see something that seems unsafe, report it to the crew.
Right.
Whether it's a damaged seatbelt or a fellow passenger behaving erratically, your observation could prevent a problem from escalating.
That makes sense. We often underestimate the power of observation and speaking up.
It's also about personal responsibility.
Okay.
Make sure you're well rested before a flight. Avoid excessive alcohol consumption.
Right.
And be mindful of your belongings.
Okay.
These small actions contribute to a smoother and safer journey for everyone.
It's a reminder that safety isn't just about rules and regulations.
Right.
It's about creating a culture of shared responsibility.
Precisely. And that culture starts with each individual recognizing their role in maintaining a safe flying environment.
This deep dive has been a roller coaster of emotions.
It has.
We've gone from shock and sadness to analysis and a call to action. It's been a journey of understanding the complexities of aviation safety and grappling with the human cost of these tragedies.
What's fascinating here is that while we can't predict or prevent every accident, we can strive to learn from each one to make flying safer and more reliable for everyone. This crash with all its heartbreaking details, will hopefully lead to tangible improvements in the medical aviation industry and beyond.
And it's a stark reminder that behind every statistic, every investigation report, there are human stories of loss, grief, and resilience.
It's those stories that should drive us to push for change, to demand accountability, and to never stop striving for a future where air travel is as safe as humanly possible.
We started this deep dive seeking answers, and while we may not have all of them yet, we've gained a deeper understanding of the challenges and complexities surrounding aviation safety.
This is just the beginning of a larger conversation.
For sure.
And we encourage you, our listeners, to continue exploring these issues, to ask questions, to demand transparency, and to advocate for a safer future for everyone who tasted the skies.
This has been a heavy but necessary conversation.
It has.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, fly safe and fly informed.